stream of the Be More podcast, where we inspire you to be more of every role within the Salesforce ecosystem and beyond. For today's episode, we are exploring what it means to be more open sorcerer, and I am joined today by Nicolas. So if you could start by introducing yourself for our audience, please.
My name is Nicolas, as you said. I am 41 years old. I code for 30 years, so 31 years, yeah, started early. I am a CTO at Cloudity, which is European Salesforce integration partner. We are 350 and we do all the clouds, MuleSoft, Data Cloud, and JustForce, everything. So there is a lot of many interesting topics that I can interact with every day. So I have a very wide job, but this is not the topic today. As the topic today is open source, I will focus on my passion, which is open source.
Okay.
And thanks a lot for inviting me, Tom.
All right. Awesome. Well, let's dive into that a little bit more then. So, if we were to break it down for somebody who's tuning in and maybe they don't know what open source is, are you able to just give us a initial definition of that?
I am not sure the purist would agree, but
Okay.
open source for me, it's when people decide to build applications or to work on applications and give it usually for free to all community. That's what I do in the context of Salesforce with SFDX Hardis. But basically, open source, it is collaborative work in the benefit of everyone. And for those who don't know what it is, probably half of what you use every day is open source. All the servers, they run on Linux. Linux, it is open source. When you, even in Salesforce, when you go in LWC, LWC is open source. When you use Salesforce CLI, Salesforce CLI is open source. So there is a lot of open source everywhere in IT.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Well, that's great to know. And expand on this a little bit more then. What would you define the role of open sorcerer? Is this somebody that ultimately helps to build and maintain open source solutions, or is it a bit more involved than that, do you think?
Mm, Unfortunately, Open-Sourcerer is not an official role. I would love to be paid to
Yeah.
be able to pay my rent just with that. Open-Sourcerer, it's more of a mindset. It's just wanting to, when you need something, you can build it for just for you and building, I don't know, a script or whatever, just for your project. Or you can also decide to build it for everyone and to share it because you like also to use the other open source tools that you can benefit of. One of the most famous, the most famous open source tool in Salesforce ecosystem is Salesforce Inspector. Salesforce Inspector, there is no company, there is dozens of individuals led by my friend Thomas Prouveau. A lot of French people in open source too.
Yeah.
And but it is something that we do most of the time as side projects, often nights, weekends, because open source, it doesn't bring money most of the time. So as our companies do not mandatory earn money from it, they don't want to spend all our days working on something that doesn't earn money. So we really have to be passionate. We need to love to code, but also to collaborate with other people because uh, having a one-person project, it has this limitation because it means that you are the only one to fix bugs, to make new features, etc. And it's really more fun when you do it with other people from all over the world. So you also have to help others contribute, to encourage even juniors that don't dare. Because sometimes people think that you need to be an architect, a CTO, or you working for 10 or even 5 years, but you don't need experience to work on open source. You just need the will. And most senior open sourcers like me, one of our roles is to help to bring more people to work on this project, so we can sleep at night and not just code and fix bugs.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. So it's good to know that AI hasn't taken over just yet. That there's still the need for these open source solutions to help other people, perhaps with similar or kind of parallel challenges. And certainly, I love how you spoke about Salesforce Inspector, because I use that tool every day. It saves me so much time, and
Who
I
doesn't?
also, yeah, it's amazing, and I encourage my clients to use it as well. And I've got a couple of them using it now, and I taught them some new features of it today. So certainly a fan of that open source solution myself. So thinking about this now as somebody who is an open sourcerer, and we're going to campaign to make that an official role. We'll see how far we get with that campaign. What type of roles and responsibilities does this person have? Like, what does their typical day-to-day activities turn out to be? Do you think you could quantify that for us a little bit more?
Yes, yes, sure. It's more night to night than a day to
Yeah.
day, because the day I spend doing CTO at Cloudity. But what is good with open source is that, as you don't have a boss, you just have a community. You don't have deadlines. You don't have someone to push you saying you have to deliver, even if it's half baked or whatever. So basically, when you want to work on open source, you work on it. And when you have a tool who starts to be widely used, like SFDX Hardis, for example, and that your company's clients and other company clients depend on it, indeed, if you have to watch for issues that are declared on GitHub, because as open source is most of the time free, people
Hmm.
don't pay. But if your open source application is not solid, but people will just not use it, because they will say, okay, it's not a serious tool, I cannot count on it. So it's a lot of responsibilities, because you you need to keep the trust of the community around your tools. For example, if SFDX Hardis, there is a bug that forbids to make deployments, and I take 2 weeks to fix it,
Hmm.
but people won't will say, okay, this tool is not. I take risk using this tool.
Yes. Yeah.
So basically, you listen a lot to the feedbacks. I always ask a lot of feedback from people, because you see from your point of view, but sometimes you see people use your tools in ways you never have imagined.
Yeah.
But as they use it that way, you have to make it work. So most of the times, you can ask people, okay, you need a new feature, you need an evolution. You can code it yourself and submit your update, and I or other maintainers will validate and will make a new version about it.
Yeah.
Um, and so there is a lot of build and maintenance, but it's nice to have a tool, but you also have to handle the communication about it. So the
Yeah.
communication about it means doing some podcast from time to time,
Hmm.
but also write articles, LinkedIn posts, conferences at Dreaming events, also at Dreamforce. So it's a lot of work. But
Yeah.
when you are really passionate, and when you find a good team around you, which is not your team because you don't have any authority, the day they don't want to work with you anymore, they just have to stop. But you don't pay them, so so they can.
Yeah.
But having a good community that provide feedback, but also new features and fixes, it's amazing, because you work on projects with just people like you, passionate people, and as there is no hierarchy, it forces everyone to be good in communication, because if you are at work, for example, you need to convince someone, you disagree
Yes.
with one of your colleagues. So when you disagree with one of your colleagues, if there is no way to agree, you call for the boss or whatever, who will choose. But in open source, if you disagree, but people stop working with you, and end of story. So you have to
Yeah.
really explain, to help, also to give a lot of support. So yeah,
Okay.
it's a little blurry, I'll say, but it's a lot of things.
Yeah. Okay. No, awesome. That's great to know. And do you think the majority of people that are involved in providing or supporting like open source projects do it as a side job? Like they have usually a full-time job as well as the open source project, right?
So it depends, because, for example, if you need a new feature of SFDX Hardis that will help you sell something to your clients. For example, there is an SFDX Hardis command that allows to export all documents of a Salesforce org, which is quite a common request. Your client will say, I want all the content version of my opportunities. I want them in a SharePoint folder, for example.
Yeah.
So if I have a command who do that, but there was a part which was not covered, and someone who works in one of my competitors' company, he made a pull request to make this enhancement. Hello, Brahim, if you look at me. Uh, because it helps him for his clients. So when you work on open source, there is no competition between companies. There is just requirements and people who can implement these requirements and make the whole community benefit on it. So
Okay.
I don't remember how I to that. Long day, sorry.
No, that's great. I think it's good for people out there listening and considering potentially an open source project of their own, whether that's a new project or supporting an existing one, because there are a number of good open source solutions out there related to Salesforce. So actually, next question we have actually that's coming from the audience, but it's nicely aligns with what I was going to ask anyway. So if there's somebody listening to this, right, and they're looking to get started in open sourcery, what would you recommend to that person to get going? Like, are you going to suggest maybe going slow and steady or kind of jumping right in? What from your experience works and perhaps what doesn't work?
I think the best is to contribute to existing open source projects, because but I don't know if you, for example, Tom, you are a user of Salesforce Inspector, and maybe you
Yeah.
would like a new feature,
Yeah.
or maybe you just want to start an open source, but you always want more to do open source if it's something that will be useful to you, because working for nothing, okay, great, but if it can be useful for your own use, it's better. So if you can go on GitHub repositories, or on the Salesforce Inspector, SFDX Hardis, MegaLinter, one of the many open source tools, and there is a tab named Issues, with basically where there is everything that is asked by people, so bugs, new features, etc.
Yeah.
You can take one, and all the repositories, they have contributing instructions. They have pages of documentation that explain you how to install it locally on your computer, how to update the code, how to test locally, etc. And when you have questions, you can ask to the maintainers, because I will for example, I will always help a junior working on SFDX Hardis for a very selfish reason. Selfish
Yeah.
reason is that any work that anyone else that me will do is a work I won't have to do. So
Mhm.
it is in the interest of open source maintainers to help anyone wanting to contribute, because it allows us to have a little bit more time to sleep at night.
Yeah, yeah, no, definitely. And I certainly like that whole, like, we're all in this together vibe. Like, I gave some feedback on Salesforce Inspector Reloaded, actually. I went into GitHub, I created some issues and some requests, and they were prioritized and have now made their way into the open source solution, which is great to see. Thinking about this now, if there's somebody listening or watching, and perhaps they're not the most technical of person, right? And maybe they're not very strong at coding. What other ways can people help with open source projects? And I have a few ideas, but I'd like to see kind of what you think about this question.
That's a very good question, Tom, because indeed, hardcore open sourcers like me,
Mm,
we are coders, but we also need feedback,
yeah.
a lot of feedback. We need people who test. So even if people are not a hardcore coder or prefer just to contribute, there are a lot of ways to contribute, and just declaring a bug with an appropriate, a professional way to reproduce it, not just a screenshot is not working.
Hmm.
It's already helping a lot.
Yeah.
So you even just sharing ideas of what new features, of fixes, etc. you would like to see, sharing it on GitHub repositories, it's also contributing.
Yeah.
People should not be scared. Okay, I am not a nerd. I won't blah blah blah. Just
Right. Okay. I think we have lost our
hello,
speak. Oh,
think I think my connection disappeared. I'm
yeah.
deeply
Well,
sorry.
no, that's okay.
My,
Yeah.
my internet my internet disappeared. I'm deeply sorry.
Yeah, no,
Uh,
that's fine. Well, if people thought this was recorded, it's definitely not. We are live, and these things do happen. So yeah, I think you were
it's
talking.
like a demo not crashing at some point. It's not a
Yeah.
demo. So
Yeah, exactly. It's just without the big error across the screen this time.
yeah.
Yeah, so I think to summarize, like you were saying, people could become involved with this in terms of supporting the project by like testing out beta versions, raising issues, maybe helping the project team like prioritize or triage issues as well as they come in. And perhaps there's a project manager type skill set required for this as well. Do you think?
Yes, and also testing and sharing ideas, and even when I always tell to my colleagues, because my colleagues are a lot of my beta users, and they provide a lot of ideas. I say, if you are unhappy about a tool, complain about it, because if we don't know that you are not happy about something, we won't change it. For example, SFDX Hardis Visual Studio Code extension, it has been created because one of my colleagues complained that I asked him to write command lines. He told me I don't want to write command lines, so I said okay, I will do an extension. Then he complained for other things, but this is there is it is not only positive feedback which is interesting. It's really okay to be critic while remaining polite, of course, because it's when you are an open sourcerer, everyone is your client who doesn't pay. But like on any IT project, it is from the feedback of your client that you know how to improve, what to do better.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. Yeah, no, that's great. And thinking about this now, if you were to start out on your open source journey again, is there anything you would change or do differently, do you think?
Yes. I think I started at 35. I was so old already, and I have learned so that I think I would have been much better in my internet. No,
You're
internet
back.
is a
Yeah,
bit
you're
slow.
here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yes, I was saying I would have been much better in my day work if I
Mhm.
started open source at 20 and not at 35. So I would have started earlier. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. And I think I can certainly relate to that. Like as somebody who's quite involved in the community, like if I had gotten involved a couple of years before I actually started, like I would just have been a better rounded, more rounded like individual, I think, because ultimately you're talking to other people, networking, and also sharing ideas, which I think is super important for this role as well, don't you think?
I totally agree with you because depending the topic, who can be open source, who can
Mm,
be podcast, communities, I think the more people, the more different people you interact with, the more rich your brain or thinking becomes. Because it's nice to work with your direct colleagues, but there are 5, there are 10. But if you open your world, you can only have benefits, I think.
yeah, yeah, definitely. And thinking about this now, as we kind of draw the session a little bit towards the end, but what skills or attributes do you think it takes for somebody to be an open sourcerer? What type of personality traits or behaviors would you expect this person
Mm.
to exhibit?
I'm not sure there is an exact answer because,
Mm,
for example, my next conference is about AI generated documentation of a Salesforce project. I started it. I started the commands and the feature maybe 2-3 months ago and
mhm,
talked about it. And since I have been joined by Maria, who is Ukrainian, who is tech lead, but a little bit shy, 27 years old. She added new features like documenting automations,
yeah,
building presentation, etc. Then I have received a pull request from Mateus, which is a junior developer in Brazil, who say, "Oh, I want in PDF." I said, "Okay, just code it."
right.
And the guy implemented the PDF output. Then there is Taha from Morocco, Salesforce Morocco, who said, I want LWC, AI generated documentation. I implemented it. And then there is also Anush from Australia, who
Mhm,
said, I like Agent Force, but I would like to use Ollama, an open source large language model, and I implemented it. And so in maybe 1 month, my new feature had 4 contributors from 4 continents,
mhm,
and
yeah, the whole
I'm not
world.
sure.
Yeah.
I'm not sure all these persons are have the same temper, character, etc. I think what they have in common is just they just wanted to contribute to something a little bigger that their daily work. Oh, hello, Maria. Uh, and I think it's hard to answer to your question because I
Mm,
wouldn't like viewers to say, "Oh, I am not like that, so I will not try." Just I think even if someone is looking this podcast about open source, it's a good enough reason to try to start. And again, if you don't know how to start, just write a message. I will redirect you to the
Mhm.
repositories. Not only mine. I will try with mine, but there are a lot of other great people that need
Yeah.
help. So really, I think
Okay.
either you are a developer, you're an admin, an architect, whatever. There are always ways to contribute, and if you want to be part of that, just send me a message, and I will tell you where to start.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Well, there's certainly a couple of people listening, and we even have some of your contributors tuning in as well. So they're definitely big fans of you and your work. So that's great to know. So thinking about this now, are there any kind of myths or misconceptions around open source that you would like to clarify for the audience? Like, do people think of open source and they come to this conclusion or make this like a particular assumption automatically? Do you think there's anything out there like that you'd like to clarify for our audience?
Have you heard about such myths? No, but some people will say it is not secure, blah blah blah, and it is not open source which is not secure. It is how a repository and an application is handled. I know that for my tools, I have many security scanner, SBOM, etc. So I know that the zero risk doesn't exist, but like with any application, hello, Rick. But if an open source repository is maintained seriously, there is no more risk than with using proprietary tools, and sometimes even less risk because it is all open. Everyone can see everything. So basically, you cannot hide anything. so yes, sometimes I know that some CISOs they say, "Oh, we don't want open source, blah blah blah," but then you remind them that all their servers are using Linux, Linux, which is open source. Uh, but no, and maybe there is also a myth that we are all nerds, and it's probably true. So I won't deny it.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes we just have to lean into the truth, and sometimes that is the truth. So yeah, it was
But
great.
I have a life aside. I have proof of that.
Yeah.
I go out. I have friends. I don't spend all my nights and weekends. Just part of the weekends and nights.
Yeah, no, that's great to know. And I hear that you're going to be making it to London's Calling soon, talking about how to auto generate your documentation with
Yeah.
open source and Agentforce, right?
Yes, I will be in London, London Calling on 6
Mhm.
June,
Yes.
and 1 week before I will be at Czech Dreaming, and I will also present the same presentation. So just do 3 clicks and
Yeah.
generate your retro documentation with Agentforce, and make a big website of it. And
Hmm.
I will also have Maria, who is in the audience, ask a speaker, because you can start to work with people. But if you get on well, you can say, okay, let's be speakers together.
Yeah.
So you can meet great people also with open source.
Yeah, definitely.
And
Okay.
Vical, yes, the chat is about how to generate documentation using all the metadatas of Salesforce, but with let's say human understandable explanations that are calculated by Agentforce or any large language model. So I think it will be a very useful tool, because today there is there is usually not a lot of documentation on existing orgs, so it
Mhm.
can create the base of big documentation.
Yeah.
And I will send you a link, Vical, if you want. I don't know if I can
Okay. Yeah, we can find VCal's details and maybe get them from there. So that's great. Well, thanks again for your time today during this chat. I've certainly learned a lot and enjoyed connecting with you. And hopefully we will encourage some more people out there to be more open source. So thanks again for taking the time out to speak to us and inspire.
Thanks again to give this audience to open source.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye bye everyone. Bye Tom.